The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of a never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?
Hello and welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable. This is episode 123, and we are going to be talking digital asset custody insurance. Everybody loves talking insurance. That's what we're talking about today. But before we get into that, let's introduce our panel. We've got Greg from Rivet. We've got Joe Dragon, founder of Dragon Chain. Satoshi Sean. And we've got Mark Ruiz Evans joining us as well. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well, man. Doing well.
I'm excited to be back. My name's John Branch. I pretend to know a lot about crypto and move us forward. That's what I do. And before we jump into today's topic, a little recap from last week. First, a quick update on World Blockchain Roundtable layer ownership tokens distribution. Each host from last week is receiving 83 lot. Each topic contributor is going to receive 83 lot. Last week's theme was past, present state, and future of blockchain tech, nominated by I Am for I Am. He's going to receive 83 lot as well. As a reminder, these ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. And we are going to be talking about the World Blockchain Roundtable DAO right now and looking at the themes for October. And we have results. It looks like these are the winners, right? We have dark web, dictatorship of the majority as a threat to decentralization, not financial advice, and then TBD, which I'm excited for TBD. Honestly, that's always been my favorite event. They play everywhere. They're everywhere all the time. So I'm excited to see what happens with that one.
Go vote. I just voted to. There's a vote to do freestyle because there were only three available winners. Right?
Yeah, let's do it. I think the freestyle episodes are always great. Yeah, and what are people excited for October? What are they most excited for?
Oh man, dark web topic is always a blast, right? So much of that. So much of what goes on there is little understood, but
we should. No joke. That's awesome. You see the dictatorship of the majority. We should try to get Larry Sanger on for that.
Ooh, that'd be a good one.
That's his big thing about about decentralized autonomous organizations that he's seen it happen, right? So where someone
he's definitely, especially with the way Wikipedia runs, right? But that's a really good one too, because I've been reading Land, Dark Enlightenment lately, and it gets into some of that, so it's a pretty fascinating topic too. Some good ones.
Right on.
You said Larry Sanger?
Sanger.
Okay. I typed in Larry Sanger and it gave me an acting studio in New York. So I was very confused.
Go check it out.
I'm excited for not financial advice. Honestly, my plants have been dying, so I could use some advice for that, how to keep them from dying. But yeah,
nice.
I know everybody missed me so much. Let's move on to this week's theme. This week's theme, like we said, we're talking about digital asset custody insurance. This was
not. If
nominated.
you're going to sell the plants, then that's a security.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good point. If they're worth more when you sell them than when you bought the seeds, you might have a security.
I mean,
What
yeah.
if-
Apparently, the key is if you
Sell it.
tokenize Beanie, like.
What if I were to use the plants to then create something else that I sold?
No, that's bad. Those are
Okay.
Sounds even
derivatives.
worse.
Then.
I don't know why.
What if I gave it away but guilted people into doing things for
There
me
you go.
because I guilted them, because I gave them
You
something?
pretty
That
much
sounds like
described
good.
all of the DGen project with NFTs.
Yeah, I don't use currency as a commodity. I use guilt. It's a very Catholic thing of me.
Thank you.
There it is. Yeah, so we're talking digital asset custody insurance, which was nominated by Bad Hair Club, and I Am for Am, or maybe not I Am for Am. We'll find out. Let's jump right into the first question. Our first question comes from. Why is it? And I see it's from I Am for Am, and I'm trying to scroll on mine. But my computer decided to be slow, so I'm going to read it from the screen. Let me see if I understand this. I have a physical asset in my home, for example, a Monet painting. Wow, he's rich. I register it on a blockchain as mine. It then gets stolen. No transfer of ownership was recorded, and I still claim that it was mine at the time of the theft. I've insured this rare piece of art with Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London pays me the claim for the stolen piece of art. Because Lloyd's paid me the claim, I then transfer ownership to them as the rightful owner of the stolen art. If and when it is found, I'm given the choice to pay back my claim money and get my Monet painting back. Lloyd's then transfers the ownership back to me if I pay back the claim money, or I cannot pay Lloyd's, and then they remain the owner of the blockchain. They can then sell it on the open market. We are essentially talking about the registration of an asset. So here's the question. Does this registration all have to happen on the blockchain? What are the drawbacks and benefits? P.S. I think digital asset custody insurance is great when art, for example, has multiple owners and each owner has a share of the ownership that is registered as an NFT. Great question. I Am for Am. Thank you so much. Greg, you want to kick this one off for us?
Yeah, sure. And it's a really interesting scenario creator because that's going to be a typical thing that does get automated on chain, right? And the advantage to having it on blockchain, the big one, is that you don't have to have a chain of custodians in order to have this controlled chain of custody, right? One of the biggest problems that you see in anything where there's something proprietary being traded, right, is sort of this need to have a responsible party, bonded or licensed or registered, and then you get that. And there are regimes of examples of that kind of regime all over the place. Just look at health data, right? There are basically threats from regulatory that are supposed to keep these people in line, and the way that those end up getting shaped and captured by industry tends to favor the custodian over the person whose things they're custodying, right? You end up with this sort of not exactly corruption, in name, but for all intents and purposes, functional corruption over time, because the system games itself in the benefit or for the benefit of the strongest and or most economically advanced parties, right? So what blockchains do is they make it so you don't have to have a person bonded, you don't have to have an organization you trust. The code itself becomes your trusted party, and that basically makes this a lot less expensive to insure. So I mean, that's sort of the high level view of it, but I think that's why putting as much of it on chain as possible is important.
Yeah, great. Joe, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of interesting things embedded in that, including if the original owner, I Am in this case, finds the artwork himself. There's an odd thing, and legally, obviously, we're in a real world, and there would be legal consequences. But if he's holding the artwork, he could theoretically sell it again. So he's gotten payment. He can screw Lloyd's out, and they would have to go after somebody for that, right? Because he could sell it to someone on the black market once he found it again. And you'd have there's several ways that you can, how do I say, incentivize for that not to happen, which is the best way to do it, right? That including royalties, for example, that Dave Monet was still alive, or maybe it's even tied to an address owned by I don't know anything about the Monet and history if there's a family or anything else, but let's say that royalties would be paid just like they do with straight NFTs, where there's no physical art. There is a really valuable pattern to the ability to pay the original artist a royalty because it, for one, incentivizes people to be properly on the record. That is, I'm not going to, sell it. I'm not going to buy that painting from you without paying the royalty because I want to be able to sell it later, right? That I want to buy that. It's not a security, apparently. It's a painting, right? So I want to buy that because I think in 10 years it's going to be worth more. And if I buy it off chain and don't pay the royalty to the original artist, then I don't have the provenance of the price increase that I can show. No, I bought it for 10 million. It's now worth 20 million, so there's an incentive to do that and to pay the original. Plus the fact that if you're a collector, it's a positive to see some of the money you are paying for it go to the original artist, right? So there's some neat stuff there, but having it work with a in a hybrid environment where you have a real piece of art, a physical piece of art and a token which represents the legal ownership of it is interesting, and it's all workable, and you can do all of this today. It's all, some of it isn't built. Some systems have some of these things built, some of them don't. Anyway, that was maybe too long of an answer.
I thought that was great. So I think it's interesting when you talk about it, because it's like the painting no longer has value anymore without the NFT. Is without that part of it,
right?
Unless you want to look at the painting, like
right.
Like we've now taken art, and it's like it doesn't matter but that's, we've already kind of done that with the idea of like how people raise the value of art quickly by just selling it back and forth to each other for a high dollar amount.
Or further.
Well, I mean, there's sort of like the same principle with designer clothing, designer handbags.
Yeah,
it's useless without the designer tag, and that's actually the thing. Mm-hmm. Like if you're prosecuted for making a forgery, it's because you clipped on the designer tag when you created an knockoff.
Oh, and by the way, most NFTs out there actually, in reality, do follow the same principle, because the actual art is typically, in almost all cases I know of, we're working on one where it wouldn't be, where the art itself is still held by a central party, and the NFT just gives you access through their APIs to it. So you would have to handle that the same way long term. Let's say some punk, or let's say some Bored Ape or something becomes, for some reason, some masterpiece. Everybody burns all the rest of them. I don't know. And becomes worth a tremendous amount of money. And let's say that the original hosters of it say, screw this, we're not hosting this anymore. Whoever owns that would still potentially, as long as they downloaded it, be able to prove this was really them with provenance records. But and they would have to manage that JPEG file the same way you would this framed piece of art, right? So kind of funny.
Yeah,
right?
Well, that's I think one of the advantages of like centralized storage, like IPFS, and systems that integrate those types of sort of repropagation algorithms. So look, rather than having to manage it sort of consciously, it's managed through operation of some automation that's housed in a smart contract, which keeps it off of somebody's plate to manage specifically, and makes it fully non-custodial.
But Mark, what do you think about selling these paintings like this?
Well, the phrase that comes to mind is certificate of authenticity. So I know when you're selling a painting or some other fine art piece, the way that they're able to say that it's worth so much is they have some certificate, and some expert says, I look at this and said it's X. I see you guys replacing that with digital technology. So it's basically it's a different way of verifying that this painting is X and it comes from Y, and it goes back. Before we had a piece of paper with some expert's name, and you went just off the credibility of that one expert. So it seems like you're replacing authenticity with something that's more durable and easier to verify.
Yep. Provenance, chain of custody, basically.
Yeah, chain of custody. That's the phrase, right? That's what it seems like to me, and it's kind of curious that we're in the year 2023 and we're debating replacing, authenticity for different things with online technology. It's kind of something you'd think we'd have done in 2000.
Yeah.
That's a cultural observation. That's not an
Oh,
insult.
so true. Well, I mean, that's the biggest problem, right? Like, even with you see it a lot in the gaming world, right? There's a in some gaming communities, there's a lot of skepticism of NFTs,
Yeah.
and in reality, it's this potentially enabling technology to give more value to the people who buy the thing, but the the leap forward needed to make it comfortable culturally is a lot harder to get.
Well, you have bad actors. What was it? Logan Paul or Jake Paul, and they had people crypto zoo something got
Yeah.
burned, and he never paid him back, and he's still out there and he's famous. So it's kind of like this walking advertisement of you can get screwed on NFTs, and the person who screwed you on NFTs can be totally cool and
Right.
move forward. Yeah, I'm not
Well,
saying
and
that's the way it appears.
Well, and what people don't realize is they're just not expecting that much of the other things that they own digitally, right? They're not expecting that that the achievement they got in the latest Baldur's Gate game is supposed to carry over to all future instances or whatever. They don't expect that of the creator, right? So they don't see that as sort of a built-in ripoff. It's a weird cognitive bias thing.
Sean, what do you think about your Monet painting?
Well, I think you're saying it wrong. It's a Monet. For that one,
I'm so sorry.
you would always say, "Hey, man, let's get some Merlot wine and sit in front of my Monet."
Yeah, glass of Chablis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This actually has opened up a whole big can of worms for me listening to all y'all. The whole system with NFTs for the artist to continue to make money on it goes off the premise that people buy and sell the NFT with crypto. But if I go and like, hey man, I like your NFTs, here's $1,000 cash. You just transfer that to me for nothing. You just pay the gas fee, like it's a gift. So that does cut the artist out if you're using anything but crypto, which no one ever talked about, and honestly, I never even thought about. Also, the thief would be open to make restitution after this as part of their sentence because they stole it. So I don't know how much because the police are going to say, "Here's your painting." They're not going to go to Lloyd's and say, "Here, well, I don't know, man. Britain is weird," but
there are some property law elements that do take care of that to a certain degree, but it is still like a court-based operation, right?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of civil stuff, which nobody cares about. If you got a Monet, you're not really cared about going to court. And that's what
I would be willing to bet, though, that people who have rare pieces of art like that are very familiar with the law of bailment.
Well, two interesting points Sean brings up. First, what would you guys think about a required royalty for every transfer? So, and it wouldn't just be a percentage then, it would be a minimum royalty. If you're going to move this painting, you have to pay $1,000 to the original artist or 10 grand, something, who knows. And then the second would be, the funny thing is the restitution, if it were required to be paid in crypto to both the artist, because that was a transfer, even though it wasn't, it was a stolen transfer. It'd be funny because I would be willing to bet that this criminal let's say convicted criminal would be more likely to be able to get a bank account tied to a crypto account where they could purchase crypto than someone who, let's say, works in crypto. Because they would be allowed to create an account with.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when it comes to like the required royalties, I think that would just depend on the artist, right? Because like some artists want to just give me my cash now because I need a flux of cash to do whatever he needs to do to make the next painting, or you could set it up that you have dividends that get paid out.
Speaking of that, I think it should be a function. So the artist, when they create the piece, should be the ones to decide, here's how I put my art out. But it should be a function, because imagine if it was if the royalty increased or decreased over time, depending, right? That would make a lot of sense, rather than it just being a flat fee forever. So anyway.
Yeah, I wonder how that would work with like if you created like a television show, right? And then 20 years from now they wanted to remake it, and you had and you're getting paid out for every time the show is streamed, and then somebody recreates your show because it's been 20 years later, so now like it's open source rights or whatever, where people can reuse that idea. Do they then need to pay you dividends for that?
Well, I can't tell you how that would work. Essentially, because all of the remakes are always Disney. Disney will get their lawyers on. They'll call up the senators that they own, and they say, essentially, we need this to be an impossibility. We want to be able to steal this piece of original content and use it to make a new movie with, cartoon characters or something.
Yeah, I think when it comes to art, though, any kind of art, especially like TV and movies, unless it's a shot-for-shot copy, you can argue it is a different creation.
Right, you're enriching it.
Based on something else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then you get into especially interesting waters there now with algorithmic based reproductions based on training sets, right? So you have like Dolly 3 coming out soon, and I'm pretty sure that they've probably got another project in the works to do the same thing for video.
By the way, the legal world is going to be crazy because of that stuff. Because I guarantee to you, anyone who has created anything with ChatGPT, all these guys who say, "Oh, writing code with it," they're going to.
Well, actually, not. I think there's a really strong case to be made for the public policy grounds to treat it as original.
Oh, of course, you're assuming logic in this realm, but
and I think that we can sort of expect that, right? And when it comes to things that are in commerce and media, right? Because the commercial interests of the original rights holders are going to best be served by not creating too stringent of a right to original based on copy. Unless we want to have a world, right, where whoever owns the training sets owns the future, right? Do we really want to limit the utility of it that much, right? Because I think you run into a problem there where you can't really get provenance on all the training data. So these algorithms will build something new and you can't tell what it's taking its inspiration from. So technically everything that it was trained on would have a fractional interest in copyright on anything that your AI creates. And well, I mean, you can imagine the nightmare of trying to organize that in a court of law to enforce it. It basically permanently nerf the functionality.
Yeah, but that's the problem. All it takes is an obvious financial positive, and you just have to pay lawyers. And as long as the VCs that, by the way, how much money is flowed into AI? Where do you think those billions are going to go when they're done beating all of the competition?
But isn't the value in it the democratization that you get from it?
Yeah,
right? The fact that anybody can type in a word and get a piece of art they imagine.
We agree. I'm just telling you how the risk. I've even advised projects who were considering to write code from AI that it's not worth it because in my opinion,
I think
it's a positive to go in and get sanity checks and say, hey, engineering questions, things like that. But
I think
But,
the simple answer is treat the user input that creates the generative content as sufficiently additive to have a copyright exception that's similar to the fair use exception.
Yeah.
Getting back
Would
to
solve
the
the whole problem
actual,
in one shot.
actual
we need you on the
Monet,
Supreme Court. I'd be fine then. But yeah, before that, I don't know. It's like I just don't trust anything.
I feel like
these
I could
people
write a long brief on that if it ever goes to the Supreme Court pretty easily. And I've been
getting back to the Monet though, that kind of, I was really excited about this area when I was talking about it, a long time ago, because I'm a nerd and I collect stuff, and how NFTs would revolutionize that. Like Mark said, that authenticity certificate.
Yep.
Because it's very easy to just make a piece of paper, and you could sign it, and nobody knows who's important. When it comes into like verifying sports memorabilia or sci-fi stuff. But I thought that was like super revolutionary. Every autograph, usually you've got to you go to a convention, you have this person sign something, you get a picture with them, and then you're buying it from Sam Jones, who's actually
I thought you were going to say a different Sam for a minute.
Flash Gordon, but so if you're buying an autograph of Sam Jones from some guy named Sam Jones, and he's got a picture that is also matches the one he has on eBay, which could be fake. He could have that, a fake picture on eBay that matches the picture he's sending you. But I thought it would be really, really great. But when you're talking now about like super expensive stuff like a Monet, you would have to. How do you connect that to the NFT? I only can see you could like embed in our RFID chip in it or something like that.
I have an answer for you.
Well, hold on, but see, then the RFID chip becomes the actual proof. So what's keeping you from making a great or perfect, replica, paying for that, and just if you know where that RFID chip is, embedding that in the fake, selling
even
the fake,
then,
having the fake stolen, and you still have your original Monet.
Even then, the RFID would have to create some kind of link or carry some kind of link to the on-chain signature, right? So as long as you have a piece of hardware that I think needs to get manufactured and needs to get manufactured soon, some kind of digital pen that creates a unique stamp, a unique hash when you do the signature, such that you might bring your pen to the transfer of this property, right? And you have the person who's signing it over to you sign with your pen.
Yeah, it's a
proxy signature. It comes to you.
It's assigned, right. And the ideal also, by the way, is to have and it's not an RFID tag. Well, it's a circuit that would react to RF that would be embedded on right. the painting, on the frame, something, or multiple of them, where they will generate signatures. So you can challenge. You can right. send RF in of value, and it can.
Well, and there are cryptographic techniques that you can use to create a unique hash. Yep. From two different sources at a time of signature at some kind of signing ceremony, which would be important in something that valuable, right? Yep. So that's where this pen comes in, right? You bring some kind of thing that also gets hashed, that has its own separate RFID tag, and then to forge that, you'd have to forge both of them and bring it together, and then also trick the blockchain.
Right. And it could be multi-sig for that matter. It could be, hey, we have to have multiple RF, ones in the frame, one's in the back panel, one's held by the museum owner, one's held by the artist's fan, whatever. It's like, okay, this transfer is happening. There you go.
This is, of course, before we get the ability to embed in the paint materials themselves, the nanoscale RFID tags.
The other thing that's interesting to note is bounty models that let's say you have a piece that is already existing, already famous. Let's say it's some Da Vinci piece or something, that there's already history there. The problem is that history is not on chain, right? It's held in some library, or from my understanding of it, they have certain groups that hold certain artists or pieces of art history. And they're typically some little cottage somewhere in Europe that you go in and, it's like Gandalf looking through old books and stuff. And that apparently what they need is to get all of that on chain. So you have all that provenance there. Some of it could be false. Some of it could be bad info. Some of it, who knows? But either way, having it on chain, let's say it's an unknown piece by this artist, and so you're putting this out, so it's a little controversial anyway, that it would allow then art experts to go inspect the piece, to get different types of scans of the piece, to look through your provenance, and your bounty would be at risk if they find that you're a fraud, right? And that's useful because then it's something measurable. So now when I'm going to go in as some organization to buy that painting, I can now look at that bounty. So there's, let's say $2 million worth of bounty sitting there for anybody who could challenge that this is real. And the longer that sits without a successful challenge, the more likely you're telling the truth.
Right. Well, and the challenge could become exponentially more difficult to make the longer you hold it. Without a challenge, right?
Yep.
So,
and because there's a time component to that, you potentially, let's say the museum that put the bounty up, they could slowly deduct, they could pull back from the actual amount of money sitting there because the time takes its place.
So you're talking like an authenticity stake.
Yeah.
Which actually goes neatly back into the idea of insurance, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that stake itself can be held in something that generates a bit of a return on interest, something, some kind of DeFi return that you can keep the stake in and fund an insurance pool that way.
I don't even know what the terms are, actuators and all those roles, accountants, all that stuff. It seems very
actuaries. I'm with you.
It seems much more organic to do this, to say, look, and it's more like buying your house instead of getting a loan and holding paper and you don't really own your house.
And all this stuff does get super complex when you bring in like licenses to different aspects of your ownership, right? Just like with a piece of property, you can lease your gas right or lease your mineral rights, or lease your water rights or whatever. With digital art, you might be able to create a subsidiary NFT that lets you gain a little bit of exchange value from the right to display it, for example.
Yes, that's a good point.
That's really interesting. So something that came up in my head, just because of what's kind of happening in the world of SAG and after, like the Writers Guild and stuff like that. So that's one of the big things that they were fighting for was like AI and like that kind of information, that new technology coming in and how it's going to affect
that made me a sad panda.
I don't know what they've agreed to. I just know that there's an agreement. So I don't think they've released like the terms of it yet. But there is an agreement.
Is that why
a whole bunch of people arguing about?
That's what it was before I couldn't. No,
a whole bunch of people arguing that typesetting is hurting people who transcribe books by hand in the monastery, right? Like, so we need to limit that.
So like they're basically like they're going through and they're adding all these union rules, so that like you can't use AI to write scripts and you have to like this kind of stuff. So are we just going to have a lot of different unions that then have impose their rules outside of any kind of government oversight for what they want, like AI's place and even like blockchain and stuff like that?
People are going to use the tools anyway. People are going to use the tools anyway.
And that's the thing. Like, there's union and then there's non-union work.
They just want to make sure they can lock out anybody from using it that isn't already a member, right? That's the stupid point of it. It's like I could go in and make ChatGPT write me a stellar screenplay, right? On a subject that nobody's ever touched in a novel way or something genre-based. Like it could be incredible. And they're going to try to create it and set this up so that unless I'm a dude's paying member, I've violated this rule.
And all the other kind of sad thing about that
is the studios won't be allowed to use it.
That would essentially probably rule out any possibility of having an AI-based generative show, right?
It's a protection racket.
That kind of sucks, really, but not that I would.
Thank God we didn't have that work out with the horse and buggy crop industry. Like we could still be required to buy one of those to drive a car if that were the case.
That's the second example of validity.
Nobody knows that. When I didn't know that till you brought it up, that the horse crop industry used to have power in government, and they had
lobby. Yeah.
lobbyists up there, and they had like all this this clout, the horse whip industry, and how that they fought against the automobile. It's just such a crazy odd thing, but it puts it into perspective how technology changes the landscape of the wealthy.
Well, and I think Mark made a point too. It's like the direct reference to the word Luddite, right?
Thank you.
Yep.
That was your second Ludditism reference.
Yep, it is literally the story of that was Ned Ludd, raised this rebellion against, what was it? What was the particular piece of hardware? Was it the loom?
Yes.
Yep.
I find it often useful to think about historical anachronisms and imagine if, because does anyone know the story of the Jacquard loom? It's a lot of people think of it as the one of
the first computers,
right? First programmable computer, where he essentially built a loom that the cards, it was fed with cards, which would tell the device, which threads go where, and so that you could essentially program this to make a blanket or whatever they make with looms. And it was super famous. If you ever watched Connections, I think it's James Burke. He went through this a bunch. It's super, super cool history.
Right. Well, it was the basis for Babbage's design for the first analytic engine, right?
Babbage, and which is a beautiful
before
device.
Babbage?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah. It was the inspiration for Babbage's work.
It's entirely possible. And I tell you, it is entirely possible that you could create probably a lower frame rate display with a loom. Imagine if Jacquard's loom had developed into, essentially an actual display for a device. And
it was the first display logic controller, really.
Yeah. So it's a single frame. Oh, it's a blanket. No, it's a frame. That's one frame. It's just an interesting thing to think about because that's how it could work, right? And it's just a crazy thought.
Right. You could say hyper engineer that over time and get to the point where it's updating frequently enough to have a moving picture, right?
Totally. You can look at electronic ink, which is a similar display tech that when it first came out was radically slow, and now they can do color and they can do much faster display updates and
right.
stuff.
The original Kindle had it, right? The e-ink.
I had that. It was crazy. Yep.
Yeah. With the use of AI and with the writer's strike and all, I was wondering if it's not free and open sourced, that like a lot of them are apps and things you have to pay for to use. If you use that, because there's tons of we've all made pictures, but if there was like a movie written or some other, even an NFT art. If it went crazy, couldn't the owners that developed that AI say it was a collaborative effort between what they created and the artist or the guy who typed it in?
Always have to credit the engine that you use to make the art, right? It's just like putting the Unreal Engine 5 tag on your game if you design it using Unreal Engine, right?
Yeah. Wow. Would they be entitled to portions of what you've made off of it since they helped make it?
It would depend. If it were free and open source, probably not. But
if their terms, it would depend on what their terms were when you use it, which is again my issue with a lot of what's out there right now. It's very much just like, well, just use it. And so I guarantee to you that some of these engines are embedding hard to detect watermarks on some of these, so they could always come back and say, "Oh, you sold that for $1 million. Come over here. We have something to tell you, right?"
But you can create an NFT or not NFT, but a QR code and embed it using what's the technique where you hide the image behind the image?
Steganography.
Yeah, steganography. You could hide those kind of identifiers in an image without it modifying the image in any way.
And in ways that are hard to detect as well, if you want. So
sort of like the practice of paper towns and map making. Are you guys familiar with this?
Paper towns and map making. No.
I've heard the term.
So a paper town, and this is actually pretty interesting because sometimes it works in reverse. There's this artist or this researcher from Indiana who also has written a lot of books, who wrote a book called Paper Towns, where you can hear about this. But his last name is Green, I think. But
Yeah.
But the idea is essentially map makers would put fake towns on the maps that were unique to them, so that they can catch people copying their map. Right. That's how you control whether or not someone's cheating in their map making. Right. So there's this one case where they created this town and stuck it somewhere in I think it was in New York, if I'm remembering this right. Well, there might have been one of the other Eastern Seaboard states. And what happened was there was this town name, and people would go to this spot on the map to see the town, and there wasn't a town there. So they created one. And when another map maker finally put it on the map, the original map maker called them up and said, "Ha, we caught you. You made our town on your map. You copied our maps. We have a rights claim against you." Like, no, there's a town there. And sure enough, the paper town inspired the creation of a real one.
I love it.
That's right. So who's...
I like this comment. G-Chin, you can put it up, Amanda. Said, "This is the Cool Beard Club."
Yeah. Yep.
He said that he's driving between Dallas and Wichita Falls. If you go through Waxahachie, funny story. They were the settlers took that land and were making the town from the Indians, and they told the Indians, "You can name our town," and they told them Waxahachie, which meant bullshit.
Oh, that's too funny. That is too
funny.
funny.
They changed the story now. They say that it means cow or bull tail, but it was what the Indians called bullshit.
That's funny. They were going to build the superconducting super collider there for a while, I think.
He's going from Texas to Wichita, Kansas.
Wichita Falls, Texas.
Wichita Falls,
Texas. Wichita Falls, Texas. Where's that?
All up north.
I remember as a kid being in Kansas. There's like, wait, Wichita Falls, what's that? Right.
All right. Well, let's move. We do have one more question. Let's move on to that one. There we go. This one comes to us from Greg. Should we be creating systems based on custody given smart contract capabilities to enable non-custodial binding transactions and digital goods? Joe, you want to kick this one off for us?
Man, we should be experimenting with anything probably, right? But it depends if it's a physical, like if it's a physical item, then there's be a reason to have a real world, I say real world, a real world contractual ability to control the relationship between the token and the physical manifestation of this thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I'm with you there, but when you abstract that away, right? Because if you've ever built software for a government, you find yourself being asked to literally mimic the physical process in the digital world, and they don't take kindly to abstractions that make sense. Right. So you end up with things like the official online document being the PDF because it's the only one that by default draws an 8.5 by 11 on your screen, even though it's a screen, and it's silly in the digital realm sometimes to do, to let the skeuomorphic metaphor carry so much precedential weight.
The thing there is the relationship between, let's say, the accepted standard model, whatever it is. We obviously need a contract. It's like, you don't need a contract. It's on chain. You can't do it without doing these steps, right?
Right.
The problem, though, it's so crazy to me because it's like the minds are so far apart, and I've not been successful to date at getting someone in the real world to do any of these things yet. So I'm not great in government work, as you say. I was very successful in convincing people to relate the current existing understanding, what they knew of, that they wanted, to what we could do, and it was always a game of letting that, not a game, it was the procedure.
It's how you tell the story, really.
Well, yeah, and it's essentially letting them know, look, yes, you can meet, but you basically bear it down to requirements instead of
Right.
anecdotal. Oh, there's a piece of paper is this size, that you can convince them because you'll get these advantages by doing this, and you won't lose
Right.
any of the things that you have to have in your, what you're doing in
Right.
your job, right? So the
So you have to
interesting
be
thing,
so you're as a contractor, you need a constantly on board, essentially sales consultant who understands the tech and who can talk to them. Right.
And
my question is really about.
But let me finish though. That I've been successful at convincing people that you can use software to do this better, right? Meet all the existing requirements and add a lot of capabilities. The thing that I've had trouble with is with blockchain, and I'll tell you my theory why this is that you could say, okay, gosh, why aren't we doing land management with blockchain yet? It's obvious. Everybody looks at this is like it's an obvious thing, and it's not. The problem is
the quarters of deeds really.
They don't understand that the fact that Bitcoin is a measurable proof associated, that I can prove that this is my property, even though there's been 3 wars and I come back 60 years later, right? I can prove it.
And you can prove it so long as the warlord in charge allows it, right?
The issue has been, the issue has been that you can't, for whatever reason so far, I've not been able to convince people that, look, you do not need any new legislation. You don't need new laws. You can still use existing contract law to do this thing. The only difference is instead of it only being in a file cabinet on printed paper, it's going to be on chain. And it can also be on a file cabinet. And by the way, the funniest thing to me is that there was a period of time when it went from pen and ink drawn contracts to typed contracts to now word processing created contracts, and they were able to see that from one to the other. My theory is that it's because of the hype and all the BS and people like Sam Bankman-Fried and all the rest of that crap.
It's
really much like,
it's the value of skeuomorphic metaphor taken too far, right?
Yeah, I am said that education is the key, and it really is. I mean, we don't need new laws. There's laws already there.
Yeah.
Like I when Crypto.com first started, I got hit by a hacker, and they took a lot of money, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, but I should have been able to call the police department and say, "Hey, someone stole all this money from me."
Mm-hmm.
But I knew if I called my police department, I would be explaining what it is for half an hour, and then, they would not even know where to begin, what to do. So, but there's already a law against stealing people's money. Whether you have it in a crypto wallet, you have it in your regular leather wallet, or it's in your bank account, or it's in your car. And we need to get, like Joe said, to just where it's like, oh, this is how things work. This, the law applies to this, and those agencies, get their butt in gear and figure out how to.
This raises an interesting side note, Sean. Are you guys familiar with keys.lol, the site?
No.
So if you go to keys.lol, actually, John, you want to pull it up?
I'm not clicking that. I'm joking.
I don't have.
You don't have control of it. Okay. We're gonna bring up keys.lol.
Somebody else wants to do it. Keys.lol.
With an S.
I did it in straight go there as soon as you said it though.
Yeah.
So I'm there.
Oh, this.
So, with
good.
this, if you click on random page on Bitcoin, go ahead, or ETH, either one.
Oh, it's checking balance for me and everything.
Yep.
This is useful in terms to show people how hard it would be to guess one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you went past the bot check, which you don't have to do if you don't want to right
except
now.
for the freaking
there we go.
Jeez.
You got to click yes, I'm human, and then you get this. And what you're seeing is a list of private keys mapped to public keys with the balance checked. And they've just generated all the possible key space for. So see the top number, the big long number between of and then another big long number. Those are the number of pages of private keys if you generate the entire key space and display it for Bitcoin, right? So if you got really insanely lucky, you could have opened this up and seen the private key for Satoshi's original Bitcoin
or JP
account.
Morgan even, right?
Right, exactly. So in light of these things existing, if somebody were to invent sort of the perfect search AI that pulled off an Alan Turing style crack of Enigma and was able to hunt through this and find very efficiently the most interesting wallets, then you've got an interesting case with art custody being very similar to sort of, I found this on the street kind of law. That was my aside. I didn't really have any major point. That's the idea dawned on me with art, with this relationship to digital art and custody of physical goods. How expensive would it have to be before you started investing in the tech? Like what kind of art would you have to find a security mechanism that would actually be necessary in this case? Because if you engineered, like I said, an AI or some advanced parallel computing approach, you might be able to occasionally guess a custodian's key in some cases.
I always told people
But
that
it
it
would
was
only be
impossible
for really valuable
to
art.
figure out a private key on Earth, because with like the fastest computers that we had, this was a few years ago, at the time, if they were working 24/7, it would take them longer than the planet would our sun would go out or go
Right.
nova probably before it happened.
Right,
So
but
you
like-
could do it, but not on Earth. You would have
Well, no, that's not necessarily true though, right?
continue work later on.
The original Enigma machine was broken open because apparently the joke in the movie, right? The only thing you need to know, the only German you need to know to break Enigma is Heil Hitler, because they were able to narrow the key space,
Right.
the search space.
Right.
How could you narrow the search space here? Well, you can look at the algorithms that generate wallets and say like none of them generate weak ones, so you can rule out any number of leading zeros on one side and any number of leading Fs on the other side of the hex space, right? We've already narrowed the search space. And that's just me thinking about it for 5 seconds. If there was enough value in the thing you were custodying, I'm sure that there are cleverer solutions that can narrow the key space further, right? How expensive does a thing have to be to stave off the inevitable risk to security? Because there's no such thing as perfect security, right? It's just how expensive is it to break it?
I think another thing that's really cool about Greg's question is, I remember when I first started my YouTube channel, one of the first reviews I did was on a project that was a digital law firm that was going to deal in creating smart contracts for the layman and all that, that kind of stuff, and how this was probably going to be a whole new section of law that was going to be coming up in the future. But for security, we were talking about getting back to the moment. Couldn't you, as you eggheads would know, build into the smart contract that if this art is reported stolen, that the NFT could have a smart contract within it that would be activated. So if it was ever scanned again, the location would go to law enforcement. All that information would be released, and basically it would render it worthless.
Yeah. I mean, and you could take that additional measure, right? And then whatever measure you took, I could get right to work on designing a workaround, right?
But couldn't you create that within the NFT? It's like basically a digital die pack, like for the bank,
right?
So
And
it makes it.
Yeah,
makes
and
it
at a certain level of, at a certain level of value, right? There's going to be a new industry cropping up on the black market to subvert your digital die pack, right? It is an ongoing back and forth between the people who don't want crime to happen and the people who want to commit crime for money, right? And that's sort of like
with a smart contract and the RFID chip, couldn't it literally not just kind of like blow up and ruin the money or ruin the painting, but couldn't it actually transmit information to law enforcement?
Mm-hmm. It could.
Yeah.
You could. Okay. And you could find yourself in a situation where you would have to constantly carry it around in like a Faraday bag.
Faraday box,
until you got to your secure display location for your stolen art. But you got yourself an original Picasso that gets lifted out of the Louvre somehow, and you've got yourself a financial interest in making sure that that stays in the hands of the illicit owner, and that they can do with it what they want, and they will pay, securing an original Picasso that's famous money, and that money itself is the question, right? That's what makes it possible to have a realistic security threat. Is the thing worth enough that the money necessary to break that security is worth our time?
Right.
Well, all I know is that I don't plan on robbing any museums anytime soon. So hopefully everything's all right. And with that, that's our last question. We're gonna get out of here and head over to current events right after this. So stick around. We're gonna be talking current events. There's some crazy stuff going on in the news. I don't know that for a fact, but I always assume there is.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to thank our host and everybody else for being here. Don't forget to go in and ask questions. Next week's theme is going to be dark web. Get in there. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Anything blockchain related is totally fine. Don't forget to share this episode. The more you share, the more our host and topic contributors will get. Greg, anything you'd like to let people know or anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, actually, bizarrely enough, I've started a change.org position that I'm going to bring back up in current events when we talk about this particular current event. And if anybody wants to, I'd be very, very pleased if you would go sign my petition. The whole point of it is kind of silly because change.org petitions don't do anything other than publicize themselves. Nobody's binding, or they're not binding in any way on the administration or whatever, but it does popularize the issue. So we know right now that Amazon is being sued by the weird new FTCs or whatever her name is. It's crazy pants land over there. They're going after them for antitrust for making it really hard to compete with them in providing value to customers. So customer benefit is now evidence of the crime as opposed to a reason no crime is committed.
Change.org stopped people from eating dogs in China, or curtailed it quite a bit.
Anyway, so go sign my petition if you also agree that Amazon should be free to continue to provide value to customers, even if it's considered difficult to compete with them, because that's not anti-competitive in the sense we really value antitrust law.
Okay. All right, Joe, anything you'd like to plug or let people know about?
No, I'm good. I'm good this week. Everything, there's too much going on in the world, so keep your head down. Make sure you have some, food in your basement ready for whatever might happen in the next year. I don't know. That's probably about it, right?
There you go. Make sure there's food in your basement. If you don't have a basement, build a basement so you can put food in it.
Dig a hole, something.
I'm a little high up, so I'll see if my building has a basement. So, Sean, anything you'd like to plug?
We got our me and Kiss are doing our new show, Crypto Rednecks. It's just basically looking at new projects that are coming out this month or in the next few months. Going through and looking to see if there's anything that looks interesting or that's worth checking out more. I think it's gonna be pretty fun. Plus, we're always a couple knuckleheads. Check out Truth Tuesdays as Lisa isn't here on both our channels, like when Lisa and my channel. And Free Assange.
Free Assange. There you go.
Always.
Oh, yeah.
And Mark, anything you'd like to plug or let people know about?
Check out my YouTube channel, Marcus Ruiz Evans, and you can see an interview that I did with Joe there. It's a great interview. He was a great guest, possibly the best guest I've ever had during the series. Yeah. And I've been interviewing people around America, asking about how they view political polarization, how bad it is, and what the potential solutions are. We're up to around 60 interviews. Nobody's done as many interviews with as many experts as I have. New York Times 2 weeks ago said they were going to start to try to do basically what I'm doing, where they're going to interview professors and academics and experts around America. Before that, basically, I started 6 months before New York Times. Nobody was really cluing in on this. There was an article in NPR talking about political polarization. They interviewed 3 professors and said, well, basically, it's all the Republicans and social media's fault. done. And I said, that's a half-assed, sorry, sophomore level analysis for a potentially very troubling issue that could affect this nation to degrees we haven't seen in a century and a half. And I thought that just wasn't cutting it. So I started to do my own interviews. And then 6 months later, that's where I met Joe. And then 2 weeks after that, New York Times goes, they described their own project, which sounds almost identical to mine. So good company, I think. We need a better conversation on polarization. We aren't doing it. I think it's largely cartooned and childish in the media. It's all this guy's fault. It's all this technology's fault. If we just get rid of this one technology, this one law, this one bad person, it goes away. I call that boogeyman thinking because it's similar to like a children's story. Children's stories are always neat and simple, and there's always a bad guy or a problem, and it can be totally defeated by the hero, and then everything's good. And when I see those sorts of solutions in the real world, I go, you're not thinking correctly, or at an adult level. Right. This is child thinking. And unfortunately, it's employed by many adults around America at the highest levels of authority.
It's
weird.
Want to be really reductive, it's the nature of politics, right? Reduce a problem to a war between two childishly, I'm right, you're wrong sides.
In America.
But it's crazy how bad it has gotten. It's not.
Thank you.
It's weird that, I mean, it's at a level that's literally mind blowing.
So you wouldn't say, oh, we've had bad times before in the past. This is like, no, this is different and new and bad.
I give an example. My stepdad was in the military, and he hated Clinton, hated him for like moral reasons because he cheated on his wife.
Yeah.
But he would say that guy. And with Trump, he's a psycho. He's not an outspoken person, very, very quiet guy. And he came for a visit, and he met like the kid's friends. He's like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Ted's grandpa. You don't like Trump, do you?" I mean, it blew my mind. It was a complete different person. So yeah.
You hadn't seen that before. You hadn't seen that level of behavior before. That was new and aggressive.
Yeah. It also like it's literally family. So like, I don't want you to come to Thanksgiving. People are cutting family out for no other reason than a political party affiliation. That is just nuts.
They have a study out. The amount of time Americans are spending at Thanksgiving has shortened by 20 to 30 minutes. For the first time since like 1800s or something like that. And that started after Trump. So that's basically, we can now tell in minutes the amount of political polarization and its impact on American families. American families are actually spending a markedly less amount of time with each other at the most significant American holiday every year. And it's only been increasing the last couple of years. So that's just one statistic. You also have others where it's like 55% of voters now don't want their daughter or son marrying or dating someone outside the other party. If you go back to the 1990s, it was only like 5% or 20%.
Wow.
Or how that's now on like most like I won't date a person from that's that didn't matter. It was like, oh, my wife's a crazy Democrat. Oh, my husband's a stupid Republican. So people, it was a joke.
I think a lot of it is too like the problem of defaults, right? Like there's so many things that people use to get information that they just pick up and use, and you end up with difficulty having this discussion if people get too inured in the narrative of one side or the other.
And here's my favorite part where I get to go, and we get to talk about all of this in current events.
Sorry.
No, it's good. I haven't gotten to do that in a while, so thank you so much.
One of my closing things is go check out vote for Brandon Herrera. He's running for Congress in Texas for like a big chunk of Texas from El Paso to San Antonio. He's a YouTuber, the AK guy, foul-mouthed, fun young guy who just our congressman voted as a Republican and voted against the Second Amendment, and he's just deciding to do something about it and standing up. He's a constitutionalist. Anyway, I thought the links on my last Truth Tuesday, so go check out. Because his slogan is Let's go, Brandon.
Clever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been World Blockchain Roundtable. Thank you so much. Don't forget to share this episode. The more you share, the more lot our hosts and topic contributors get. Get in there. Go to den.com. Is that what it is?
Den.social.
Den.social. Den.social. It's been a minute. Sorry. Den.social. Den.com is a karaoke bar in New York City. So don't go there. Not joking. That's what it is. Go to Den.social and go to the World Blockchain Roundtable layer and ask us some questions about the dark web.
Yep.
If not,
or at least if you go to the karaoke bar, also go to den.social and maybe show it to them because they should create a layer.
It's super. Yeah, they're real weird people when I showed up and was like, where's my layer? Yeah, they did not react kindly to that. Yeah, go in there, ask us some questions about the dark web. If you don't, I'm just going to make a bunch of Matrix videos and it would be really weird.
That would be
annoying.
Cool. Awesome.
We'll see. I'm excited to get back making the videos too. It's been a minute. Life's been crazy. So I'm excited to get back to doing some more stuff here. Get in there, ask us some questions. Let us know what you want to talk about. Stick around for current events. See you next week. Bye.
While nuclear weapons states can exert unlimited violence over even millions of individuals, strong cryptography means that a state, even by exercising unlimited violence, cannot violate the intent of individuals to keep secrets from them. Cryptography is the ultimate form of non-violent direct action.
Assange.
That's really strong. Really damn strong.
I get chills every time I think about it, honestly.
You know that a lot of Americans are not aware of how god awful, horrible dictator like America now appears to all of our Western allies because of what we've done to Julian Assange. They're also not aware that the Obama administration didn't dare try to do what the Biden administration is because they thought it would be a chilling effect on free speech and reporter access. Biden didn't care about that at all and just went hardcore for it, which was closer to Trump's strategy than Obama's.
He carried it forward. He carried. Yeah, he had the chance to reverse course right away. He could have taken us back to a constitutionally kosher approach to the First Amendment.
If he is involved. Anyway,
well, I mean,
it's like whoever is running, it's Obama behind him anyway.
Yeah, he does still have looming questions about his orientation to time, place, and person.
But when I saw McConnell, stand there and freeze like that, and
that's sad.
It's sad. It was sad, but then it's like, oh, these are meat puppets. They're not. Even
it's a gerontocracy.
He's done it multiple times now. That's what I don't like. If that's somebody on like the Supreme Court, like we're running tests on you at this point. Like,
at least we know he's not really a turtle because he would have pulled his head back into his shell at that point.
And they came him up and said it was like it was like my grandfather when he was at the end. She's like, "Did you hear what he said?" He said, "Are you running for re-election?" And then he was like, "Oh, hello, dear," and it's like, "Oh, that's enough,"
Oh man,
it's creepy.
Yeah, SNL was on while that happened.
What does that say to you guys, though? We have this system where we have no tests for cognitive ability. And basically no interest. I mean, they were talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg the year before she died. Oh, you couldn't mention that. And then we got Dianne Feinstein out here in California. We talk about that all the time. She gave up power of attorney, but not her power in Congress. Right. That is ridiculous.
Oh, and when they asked her about it, she literally didn't remember. I'm pretty sure based on her emphasis, like how emphatic she was, she didn't remember being out for the better part of the last term.
I think it's all because of what you're talking about. It's so us versus them that nothing else matters.
I mean,
Fetterman was a human tragedy. It's a
three things.
Issue at this
sad.
point.
He had a stroke, but he's not going to be able to do the job. Didn't matter. He's a Democrat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing else
Three
matters.
things they need.
That
They
would
need,
be
I
they
feel
need
bad for
term
getting
limits.
used to those
So
people.
rather than age limits, because who knows? I think term limits are more appropriate, right?
Okay.
Along with term limits, you have to get rid of the civil service thing, because that's what the deep state, that's who actually control the government. You have to get rid of that. That's become a thing to itself. And the last would be dual or multiple citizenship. They should not allow anyone who has a separate citizenship to be in any of those positions. That's just the way it is. If any rational country would do that, if the founding fathers were here, they say, "What the fuck are you guys doing?"
Well, I mean, and to a certain degree, we're victims of the success of Western medical technology, right? Like, right now, the fact that these people are still alive is something that would be hard to comprehend back when the country was founded.
True.
And the amount of cognitive decline that happens just to people without Alzheimer's, even as they get to that advanced age, is just, it's a natural part of getting old right now until we bring about a decent reversal for aging therapeutic that actually can be worked at scale. This is going to be a problem.
In a state where you have some senior who pretty much they throw around a lot of weight, like in a small state like Kansas, when Bob Dole was in there,
right?
Like, you wouldn't get rid of them because anybody new coming from Kansas is not going to have.
And their handlers, to me, are abusing them.
Well, and that's the issue, that they become so valuable and so easy to buy that it becomes. And that happened to Rome, that happened to Greece, that's happening here. We need to be aware of it and realize when it needs to be called out and say that's treason.
Well, I mean,
and that should be a freaking, you sell your position, you sell a vote, you're fucking dead. Live
I think
on
the way
TV,
you have to reframe it too is to reframe it as like, so right now we don't have, like, people used to call it child pornography, now they call it CSAM, or child abuse evidence, basically child abuse imagery, right? You don't have any of that stuff being treated as if the material should be used that way. When we're watching a political speech done by a person who has late stage dementia, what you're watching is elder abuse imagery.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's why we need the grandmother council, which is where we take all of the grandmothers. We take like a group of grandmothers. It's like, I have the sweetest grandmother in the world, okay? And we put them in a council, and then they meet with every person that serves. That's an elected official. They meet with every single one of them every fiscal quarter to 6 months, and they have to sit down and just have tea. And if the grandmother is like, this person's has it together, then that's fine. Then they can keep going. If these sweet little grandmothers are like, I don't trust this person, then they're stripped of their office. I think we just put a bunch of sweet little grandmothers in a room and give them tea.
It would really be civil.
Basically, that's the electors. Then we're gonna have a bunch of grandmothers, and they decide.
A lot of the grandmothers will be half the age.
It's more like a morality test, It's like, if you can't have a conversation with these sweet grandmothers, then I don't know if you have any business making decisions, or at least like talking to your constituents.
I agree. There was an image of Elizabeth Warren, and she's pretty popular and fairly intelligent. And she was at a convention, and this is the other problem besides them being old, is that they don't really know how to talk to people. So Elizabeth Warren was at some convention, and it was meet the public, and some father walks up and he goes, "Hey, you're talking about free college education. Personally, I support it, but that's aside from the issue." Father comes up and he goes, "You're talking about free college education. I told my daughter for 15 years, we have to save and we have to sacrifice so that you can have better things in life. And now you're saying you don't have to work hard, you don't have to save, just have the government give it to you." And it's like, what's the point of me making my daughter not be able to go on those trips, have to save money, work hard, and scrounge, and you're going to undo the whole thing? And Warren just sat there, goes, and you could tell even the smart ones, they don't have a clue how to talk to the public. Nancy Pelosi, a lot of people talk well about her. And I'm like, do you realize Nancy Pelosi never ran in a race ever? It was basically, her power was given to her by her dead husband's legacy, and the fact that she was in power because she could fundraise better than anybody, and they basically just gave her positions and let her float to the top in Congress, not because of her leadership ability, but because of her fundraising.
She is a good trader.
Though, is that they don't know how to talk. They haven't been talking. they've been told what to say for so long that they no longer have the the muscle to be able to debate or to talk to somebody.
Right.
I would
Like
say there's some
social
sort of
media for that
bubbles
one.
too,
Because
right?
they'll be like passionate and blah blah blah, and someone will say, "What about this?" And they're, "Well, I actually don't, I didn't read it, but it's really important." And they're and they're like, they have no idea. They're just spouting what they were told.
I don't know
and
if they don't have any
on it.
idea, though. I think there's a certain cynical game being played here, right? I don't think they have a lot of respect for the intelligence of the populace.
Right.
They treat
They
the
think
silent
they're better than
majority as if it's a rhetorical prop, as opposed to a group of people who have checked out because they're so flabbergasted by how they're treated by these people who are talking down to them, when these people who are talking down to them are running from a playbook that is working on a smaller, more extreme portion of idiots on either side, right?
Can we be honest here? Can we be honest here too? They are all
Polarization
individuals.
is
They're
to
all-
me a function of that. More than anything.
They are all individuals. So some of them are smart and are know that they are traitorous, right? Some of them know that they're committing treason. They're smart. They know they're doing this. Others are just owned that they are held by blackmail, and they are reciting what they're told to say because somebody has a picture of them doing something that would get them.
Yep.
Well, I mean, and I don't think we even have to necessarily.
You're right.
Presume that they're doing it purely cynically or consciously. I think it's almost a culture of it, right? Where they still think they're doing what's right, but they get trained into this culture where doing what's right equals doing this evil, right? So they can firmly believe that they're on the side of good and the side of right, and still be doing something perverse.
Will blow the lungs out of the body.
Wait, sorry?
Who said that?
Not Joe Biden.
Oh yeah.
He was talking about he was talking about like a shotgun and then he goes, 9mm, that blows the lungs out of
I will tell you too. Anytime it comes up, and we talked about this, Mark, on your interview, that if you guys remember, obviously we're at 2008, you had the banking issues. We bailed them all out, right? And everybody's saying, wait a minute. These guys, this is ridiculous. It was their own fault. They did this. They made money on it, and we're now bailing them out.
Yeah.
And it became Occupy Wall Street. And immediately they started drumming up all types of different identity politics, mostly to separate. It's like,
thank you.
Oh, it's black versus white. It's Christian versus Muslim. It's all these things except the bankers. It's not the bankers.
Well, I mean,
Jamie Dimon's a great guy.
And even then, the only one they went after was Abacus,
Good
right?
observation.
They jailed some immigrant banker, and that was
Low
the only
level.
person they nailed for the whole thing.
They jailed one low level brown skinned immigrant guy.
They essentially demolished what was there.
And that's a point that you make constantly to people that I do. It's like, I don't think the government's not lying about this, or that's crazy that you would. That's a conspiracy theory. It's like, well, it's they did this, and the government did this, and 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 this, and
It's built around
they had
framing
investigations, and nobody got in trouble, and nobody went to jail. So I'm sure they would do it again.
Well, and can I say something that is like this? I tell this to my kids whether they listen or not. You can look, and I'll tell you on the front side of this, because I have 2 points to this. On the front side of this, to prove what I'm about to tell you, you can look up, among other things, there's several programs you could look up, but look up what has been released about MK Ultra, how it works, what they did, and consider how objectively evil that was. And we did it. No one went to prison over it.
Moreover, how they rolled it back into COINTELPRO.
Nothing was canceled about it. It still exists, and we know it. And so I always tell my kids, it's like, look, your best bet, take the most evil entity in the universe, whatever it is in your philosophy. Is it demons? Is it some type of particular type of alien? I don't know. It's whatever is evil. So let's pretend because everyone can kind of understand it. Let's pretend it's demons. Let's pretend that they man all the positions in the federal government. Right? That would mean all the regulatory bodies, or at least most of them, all the leadership, and assume basically what would they do? What would they do if they were and that is what you should be assuming is going to roll out. Right?
Well, I mean, and it's a useful metaphor, right?
Yeah.
But the weirdest part about it to me is it's almost an extra layer of defense to think about it as if there is one unifying mind of evil behind it, when in reality what it is the natural evil of a system that's been set up. You know,
Yep.
there's an evolution of this this sort of administrative technocracy that just naturally evolves this way. And I think Ludwig von Mises spotted exactly how this works. If you really want to get a rundown of it, read some of his early works like Bureaucracy, and you get a good breakdown of sort of just how it naturally progresses towards towards evil, even if you intend to do good with it. And that is, I think, where we find ourselves today.
I think the reason
I'm with
we
you
have
though, Joe. I think that's
so much
a really good piece of advice.
blatant stuff going on is because of what Mark's been going after. That people that are committing evil know they can go further because they know that people will make excuses for them from their side, because they know that they're not going to get questioned by their own base.
Thank you.
Trump,
Yeah.
I mean, and this gets Trump supporters really pissed. But it's like, no socialism on my watch, no socialism on my watch, socialism is all evil. Oh, we have to bail out the entire airline industry. Here's some money. That was one of the most things ever. And when I say that, well, that was no. What do you expect? I expect there to be the market for all of those airlines that beat people because they're pulling them off the plane because they overbooked it and were terrible. And the companies that were Southwest had no problems. They should have been able to. It's not like the airplanes disappear and all those assets go away. No, they have to sell them for pennies on the dollar, and the good companies profit from running good companies.
And the really good companies invest their assets safely enough that if there's an economic downturn, they don't go under, right? And those are the people who are running the best of the best companies, the ones that should survive. And if we pull the kind of sort of, this what you can call corporate welfare, you might just call it straight up fascism, right? This thing we do where we bail out the losers at the top end at the expense of everybody else.
It's the same thing that happens on the front end too.
It's a uniparty. It's a uniparty of structure. It just, which story are you telling about the same thing you're doing?
Yeah, the regulatory bodies exist before that happens in order to position those and keep anyone from competing with them. That's the whole reason all regulatory bodies exist.
Right. If you want to save the airlines, get rid of the FAA's authority to regulate them.
Right. Right. I mean, watch the movie The Big Sort. It's on Netflix. It's called The Big Sort. It was about the 2008 financial collapse. It's got Christian Bale in it, former Batman. Very good movie. He plays a real life guy out of California who basically he realized there was going to be an economic collapse, called the FBI to alert them. And then they said, thanks, we're going to open an official investigation on you.
Yeah, they're going to arrest you.
Right. Well, the same thing with crypto.
And then the collapse happened. So don't read into that. Just a coincidence that happened before the collapse. And don't read into that. And don't.
How many coincidences have to happen before you get suspicious? Is what I want.
Just don't go down there. We can't. We don't know that. We don't know that. It's just magic coincidence. Just totally happened. Okay, nothing. No coordination here. And there's a part in the movie where he goes to the federal regulator. Well, didn't you check this? And she goes, okay, look, I'm going to tell you how it is. It's a revolving door. I leave and go work for that company, and then I come back to the regulatory space and somebody does. So we don't want to ruffle feathers. So we kind of go, do you have your paperwork ready? Yeah, bro, it's totally good. You know what? That's good for me, bro. Go do your thing. And she's like, that's how we regulate. And there's a scene where they're looking at her going, what? Like, this is not on your website description. This is not how it's supposed to work at all. You're not doing your job at all. You basically abdicated total authority. No one in America knows this. And you have the title of federal attached to you. Everybody thinks you're doing a job that you're not doing. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, basically. Yep. But nobody asked.
The whole thing is a knowing wink, Yeah.
Yeah, and they go, and that's cool. And that movie came out, and then we also see things like the FBI, which is a great, reputable organization full of many hardworking people. At the same time, They have now been caught in their second made-up scandal, the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping. Didn't happen like they said. This is This is after they also got caught setting up, I think, 2 or 3 Muslim guys in New York City to try to get them to do a bombing. So this is the second time where they're like, we busted this ring. Yeah, that you built.
What is it? Near to,
if you look at all the domestic
2016,
terror stats, that's pretty much what they're doing.
In 2016, near to half of all child porn sites on the dark web were operated by the FBI.
What?
Known. Yeah.
What?
Known. Oh, these are honeypots.
I'm not fucking surprised.
How is that helpful?
But that's sickening.
Wasn't it last week I said that I saw the statistics, and there's like 23,000 employees for the FBI. There's only like 2,800 agents out of 23,000.
Wow.
That's weird.
And the majority of them work in one office in Washington, like 20,000 people in one office.
Right, intelligence analysts.
Vivek is the one. Vivek is the one that was talking about it.
They're domestic spy
most
agents.
of them are admin or they're working at the building.
Some other assistant role.
Yeah.
It's not even a secret.
Bill Maher's like, how big is that building? And Vivek's like, it's one of the biggest buildings in the world. But it's nuts.
I don't know if you guys ever go looking for just like policy plans on .gov sites. You can go and see exactly what they're doing. They put it in very sort of bureaucratese euphemism.
Yep.
But if you know, for instance, what capacity building means, then bureaucratese, right? Then you can see whenever they're using that, what they really mean is we are conditioning the populace using propaganda, right? Like whatever it is. Capacity building is in government always about use of force, right? Whatever function they're leveling a gun at somebody for. It's use of force at the core. So capacity building for the IRS is hiring new agents to increase their audit capacity. Right. If it's the FBI, it's now they have a dual mission, and you can find this out in the domestic terror policy strategy that they released in 2022. It's about making them more of an intelligence gathering agency than a law enforcement agency. And that's what that big building is for.
They're buying up all the genetic info from any of the commercial.
Right.
If you've done 23andMe, they own your.
Right. They need to know where to send the agents based
that.
on the algorithms. Right. So this is what we are getting into with all this stuff. The administrative state is becoming an end unto itself.
So how many of you?
Itself.
Because I still, everybody knows how bad things are, yet it still surprises me when people think that this federal government, not this country, but this federal government is not, it's impossible that it would ever collapse. Because I think they're, closer than they've ever been when you get into the multi-trillions of official debt that they're counting. I can't see it lasting much longer looking at history.
I think
I'm just looking for freedom, right? I don't care if there's a little chaos. I need.
The question is, I think, more of like how long does a parasite that's mutated into no longer benign take to kill a toast, right?
Well, with that, I gotta go build a basement though, real quick. So I'll see y'all there.
Yeah, right. A nuclear bomb shelter with, but I mean that. I know you're joking, but that gets at the question of, so how do we fix it?
I don't think we can fix it. I've said that for a long time. I think if you are a student of history, and Joe said it, the Romans, the Greeks, everyone were following the exact same path. And once it got to a certain point where information is owned by one entity, all military is owned by one entity, all weapons are owned by one entity, food is mainly controlled by one entity. That's the end of it. That's the collapse. And then you see like the moral fortitude and fiber of the mass start to change, and things get loose. Gender bending in every culture was like one of the last things to happen before that empire collapsed. And I think it's just arrogance that people think, oh, that happens in third world countries. And then you're talking about how other countries view us. They view us as a third world country. And you can go look at San Francisco.
Oh yeah, Chicago's more dangerous than El Salvador now.
Yeah, I mean, Austin. In Texas, Austin's really not Texas. It's weird. That's their motto, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But if you go to Austin, I mean, there's homeless people there. It's very different than
even Denver. Even Denver, of all places, has turned into you got to step over.
We got to Seattle, guys.
To say that we're so different and it can't happen here, no, it's happening.
Well, I think there's a lot of hope in the idea of parallel systems, right? I think that is where we have to go, right? We don't necessarily need to tear down committees. We need to build ones of our own. We need to have systems that are ready to take the place of the institutions that are failing us, such that, when things finally fall apart and the parasite kills the host, right? That the late stages of it that get really violent and barbaric, that those don't become things that people are still beholden to, right? The right of exit, I think, is the most important thing to cultivate, though.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I thought for a long time that I guess I still believe we need to build the tools that we're either going to need in the transition or after it. We need to build those capabilities with what we have in a way that when we come out of it, we can build a better constitution based upon or rebuild the constitution that we had parts we still agree with, whatever.
Hopefully one based on autocracy, because then we won't have professional politicians trying to run policy.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, because there are a lot of really cool ideas there, especially when you break it down into, why do we need a large centralized federal government with so many guns and so much.
Well, that's also questioning the tool set when the underlying dynamic of it is really what misuses those tools. Yeah. Right.
But increasingly, and I've seen this online a lot, and I'm increasingly falling into the category that I think the answer is accelerationism. We need to just let this whole thing fall and do everything we can to
speed it up.
To speed it up, because it's taking too long.
Every time I see something like
Nick Land is totally right on board with that.
Man, let's get it over with. Get it over with. Come on, get it over. Let's do it.
Yeah. Tired of waiting 2 weeks. That's the one thing. I'm freaking tired of waiting 2 more damn weeks. So,
well, and I think that it is kind of accelerating beyond control already, right? Like we've kind of got the singularity loop going.
Yes, it's often said it's almost a meme now. But what happens in the span of a week now used to take 5 to 10 years. The amount of happenings and crazy stuff to talk about on something like a current events segment, right? It's like we can't even cover everything because there's too much going on.
Oh, it is going on it's going on faster and faster, even just over the last year. You've noticed. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but especially in the crypto space, if you try to keep track of what's going on with the suppression efforts around there, we had sort of the big what was the name of the group that came out with the story on Choke Point 2.0?
Empower US.
Yeah, I think that was
Empower Us or Empower US. I don't know how they pronounce it.
And the folks that were mostly uncovering that uncovered this maw, right? That sort of merges into the work that like Matt Taibbi's doing with the censorship industrial complex, and that
it's all
that merges into what Greenwald's now sort of uncovering with what's happening to Russell Brand. And the UK passing that law. There's so much happening that seems to be glomming onto itself and creating a snowball effect.
In the past, let's say the past 10 years, because I don't know what year he did this, but Trump tweeted about the deep state. That was mind blowing to me.
To hear regular journalists use that term blew me away.
Yes, it's crazy. And then the fact that you have all of these. Both with Assange, with Snowden, and with Dread Pirate Robert, right? And McAfee. I mean, it's just so many things came to light that we would have never known.
They still haven't released his body to his wife.
Oh, I interviewed his running mate when he ran for the Libertarian Party, Adam.
Awesome.
I forget his name. And
Kokesh.
We were really good friends. Met him very well, and he was really, really, really disturbed by his passing. So that really shocked. And that's a combat Marine. He's been in combat, so it's interesting to see that something like that could rattle him.
Yeah.
There's,
Well, I mean-
there's well, the freaking his apartment building was collapsed,
His
and he
son's.
had foreign nationals come in to dig through the rubble.
That was
And
interesting.
nothing ever explained. It was like,
Yeah,
wait a minute.
his son's building in Miami.
Yeah.
Would have been a really great way to hide
Or the day after,
the
the
electronic
same night.
evidence of a dead man switch getting thrown, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what they were worried about. That's why the building collapsed, because
Yeah.
it was because they didn't know where he had the information stored.
So
Right.
it sounds like you guys are not hardcore alt-right white supremacists, but you believe that the deep state might be real. Is that a fair summary?
Well, I was told
I
on
wouldn't-
CNN that it was.
I don't think there's really any debate about whether it's real.
They
Right?
used the word.
It's not so much like I don't even like to call it the deep state because it has so much moral baggage associated with it. Like,
Yeah.
when I say the
Whatever
administrative
you wanna
state,
call
that's
it.
what I mean, right? Like, it's obviously there. If you're
Yeah.
not seeing it, you're intentionally blinding yourself to it.
Well, just because it's considered, only alt-right conservative extremists use the phrase "the deep state" or believe that it
Right,
exists.
and Russell Brand is part of the
you know,
alt-right now, even though he's an avowed leftist, right?
I-
And Glenn Greenwald, an avowed leftist, he's also
and Matt Taibbi. Matt
right.
Taibbi.
Oh yeah, of all people,
alt-right.
right?
Yeah.
And if you listen to his thought, it's very, very much pro-collectivist communist when it gets down to how he would run a world if he ran it. But these people have one thing in common: is they value dissent and the freedom to voice it, right? And that is now sufficient to make yourself right.
Yep.
Oh,
You're gonna
me.
report this to the alt-right podcast.
Squigs, I hope you're joking.
Wow,
But the
damn.
impulse to silence us is telling. If you did,
He's-
we would
Squigs
keep
is a good
talking
guy.
and you wouldn't hear us
He's joking.
anymore.
What do you guys think about current events? And I don't speak Spanish, unfortunately. I grew up in Dodge City. I should have picked it up, but I didn't. But running for Argentina is he's the leading candidate, and I'm blanking on his name. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll look him
blanking
up.
his name. He was just interviewed with Tucker, though, right? And he had all the translations and stuff. And he had some interesting points that he's going to eliminate a lot of these central government positions. And yet he's promising he's going to give them time to step out, which is an interesting thing. I just thought it was like, that's at least a
Javier
good
Milei.
transitional Milei, yeah. Milei. So it's a good transitional thing because it would at least make them think, okay, I'll find another job. Because here in America, one of the things that blows my mind, and I think most people would probably be really pissed if they realized how much their elected representatives, and that's city, state, and federal level, make over their equivalent commercial counterparts. That if you're a normal person paying taxes, you're making, and I don't know the numbers, but it's very likely 20 to 40% less than someone with the same talents, the same skills as you, making with either the federal, state,
And they're
or
largely
local
sitting
government.
around relative to you too. It's sort of like The Sopranos, right? You get
Yeah.
the construction job where you go hang out at the site.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a little bit of a reason for that. I work in state transportation. You have the guy standing with the shovel so that he can see cars coming and not hit the other construction workers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I get your motif.
Oh, yeah.
I get the example.
Yeah. But the fact is that, I mean, even in our local town, not a big town, and these people are making in the six figures, and that's not a common for the people with the same level of skills and
that's
education
like,
as them.
it's an easy to understand metaphor, right? But I think the real meat of it is probably more the people surfing the web over at that big FBI building, right? Or the people who are hanging out in some back office of the DOE,
and what's worse,
working for months on a graphic for a report that they're issuing to another subdivision of that.
I was a contractor at the FBI, and we were largely second-class citizens. When we would walk in the building, our badges were a different color. And so not all this, a lot of the guards were great, right? But some of the guards would, I kid you not, there was this older female guard who, when a contractor would walk through, she would check your badge and everything, but she would have her hand on her gun because you're a contractor, because you're not a federal employee. And and I tell you, what's worse is these people make 40-50% more than the equivalent person in the commercial world, and they are unfireable. They would have to murder or rape someone on site to get fired.
Well, and even
These
then,
people
like,
cannot be
you'll
fired.
see,
They
like
walk
Bureau of Prisons.
around
Good luck getting fired for
day.
that.
Anyway, it's just pretty disgusting. And if people would kind of wake up and think, it's like, that's not really fair, and we're paying for that, well, why don't we stop that? Right? It's crazy. Anyway.
Ooh, that hits it too. One of the most interesting pieces of free speech that even the hardcorest of alt-righties won't tread on, right? Is proposing what McAfee proposed, outright tax revolt. If you start saying that, you're guaranteed to get hit. Like they will come after you for advocating to stop paying, because that's the ETM Lebuddy solution, right? Just vow not to facilitate your own oppression, and you will once be free.
That's an interesting thing. So you go back to when Trump was elected, and California freaked out. Right, like about a third of Californians, 32%, said, "Let's secede from America right now, not tomorrow. I don't need to talk. Let's go." And less reported by the news was that it was 47.5% of Californians said, "I'm willing to have this discussion to secede," and that's according to.
You would never know it.
Well, because the news didn't really want to report it. That came out from Reuters, Ipsos, and Stanford University Hoover Institute. And then what the news did was they go, well, only 1/3 said they want secession, so that must mean 2/3 don't. That's not what the survey said. The surveys asked 3 questions. Do you want it? Do you not? Or are you not sure? And then when you add the not sure with want it, it bumps up to 47.5. GQ magazine covered that. None of the other publications would cover that.
You have to
make the assumption, given the null hypothesis, right, that those people were just afraid to speak up in favor.
Idaho. My friend lives in Oregon, and he thought it was like the biggest issue in the world. And I'm like, no one knows about this. And I've been talking about it for like 2 years. I said, Robert, nobody knows that this is happening, because if it did get out that states could do this, it would be like California. There are people, so many states would be like, no, let's, which is how it was supposed to be. We were supposed to have 50 different countries and come together as like a mutual defense kind of EU thing. But the states were supposed to kind of run themselves, and the federal government was supposed to be very, very small. So things have changed, but they don't report it.
No.
They do
Solution
not report.
Idea for a solution to some of this, what we ought to do is we ought to abolish the not sure option on all of our surveys. They should instead say something like, I could go one way or the other, let's discuss. Because really the implication of not sure doesn't mean this issue is one that I would rather stay not sure of, right? Like, but the assumption always drawn from not sure is I'm uninformed and intend to stay that way.
It can be, but it could also mean, you could go to the yes or the no column. So theoretically, you're available to go to the yes or the no.
Meaning there's a discussion to be had.
Yeah. So, when you look at it that way, you can get up to like almost half of California was willing to look into this. Now, the interesting thing is that as controversial as that idea was, 2/3 of Californians, like 65-70%, had absolutely no problem saying, let's just not pay federal income taxes as long as Trump's president. That's a felony and a crime. And you had a bunch of them. You even had Willie Brown, who was a famous politician out here, going on TV and suggesting it. So we had a lot of ex-politicians going on TV suggesting a felony and a mass federal crime. Nobody thought that was weird. Now, if you're talking about secession, that's extreme. I'm just talking about violating the federal law and encouraging a lot of people to break the law at a mass level of 30 to 40 million. That's not crazy.
Well,
that's where we're at.
In and of itself,
that's where we're at. So when I see
the
people
essence of secession,
America can hold on and we're going to do it. I'm like, do you see the crazy ass conversations we're already having now? And the reasons that we're choosing to stay together. There was those people that talked to Joe Biden, like, maybe we'll secede. And he goes, okay, well, then we'll drop a nuke on you. That was his response. That was the president's response when somebody wants to leave. It wasn't, don't leave.
Like F-16s was another one.
Yeah. We got F-16s. We got nukes. We'll blow you up was how we talked to fellow Americans on why they should stay part of America was I'll just kill you if you leave.
Right.
That's the
You're not leaving
best
this jail.
explanation we have from the highest elected officials.
Oh,
Does
yeah.
that say anything about
It's
how
terrifying
unstable
too
this country
because
is?
it's terrifying too because what they
We don't even
really
have good
need
reason
to
to
say
be
is
here
drone
today.
strikes. They just don't want to say that out loud.
Well, we've been talking about me and Lisa and we've mentioned it here that a lot of states are doing what Texas did a long time ago. They have a National Guard, but then they have a state militia state guard.
My man.
But honestly, the governor is supposed to be like the head of the chain of command with the National Guard, and they have the federal government sending National Guard troops to different countries. They're sending National Guard troops to Taiwan and having the Taiwanese military come here to train, but to not offend China, the Army and the Air Force and the Marines are not training them. The National Guard is training them. So it's not actually our military. It's our like.
So I know
like,
I've mentioned this to everybody here before, but Mark, how familiar are you with the R9X Hellfire missile?
I'm not.
This is a drone-launched missile that instead of an explosive payload has 4 basically samurai swords that extrude out the side as soon as it hits.
Oh, I've seen that. I've seen that. And they used it to take out a terrorist leader in northern Syria.
That thing is designed not to destroy infrastructure and have as much collateral damage while hitting specific targets based on data gathering from a drone.
Yeah, an individual slices them up.
When I hear domestic war on terror, I hear drone policing with Ginsu knife, freaking Hellfire missiles. Like these.
They dropped it on that guy in a moving car,
in
and it killed him and none of the other passengers in the car. That's how specific it is. So they can literally eliminate you in a car, and the person who's sitting 4 inches away from you is totally fine, basically.
Right.
So
at minimum, they go to the hospital with some minor injuries.
So that's where they're getting to that level, And we saw how they had all the weapons of Iraq, and then what did they do under Obama? We brought them here. And then we saw how they had the surveillance system in Iraq that they developed in order to keep track down the Sunni terrorists. And then what did they do? They brought it here to America, and now we use it. And so, there's a pattern of the things that we use in foreign wars, we bring and then use on our own domestic population.
Yep.
So I could easily see that. Also, when you look at the protocol for drone strikes that was, I believe, released under the request of Senator, I'm forgetting his name, but it was during the Obama administration.
Yeah.
All they have to do is a high-ranking official in the military or government has to declare you a terrorist, and then it's okay to kill you.
That is called a targeted killing as opposed to murder.
That's the official U.S. federal government policy as released in Congress. A high-ranking person, doesn't define who, doesn't define how they came to that information, has to declare you a terrorist. There's no rebuttal process, doesn't define how they get the information, and then it's legally okay to have you murdered.
Well, or anybody else who's ever had a SIM card with a UID that's been carried by you. So anybody who carries if you get,
and that was under the good president.
You get a universal device identifier that matches too closely, and they make a little mistake, right? You could also get droned.
Well, and then we're already looking at where they will deplatform people, remove their bank account. That was huge. I remember I was not a big fan of Alex Jones, but when that happened to him, I go, this is going to go no place good. I know what this is. They pick the worst, most hated person to test it out on, see if the people will freak out. People don't freak out. They do it. That's basically what Hitler did. So a lot of people, Hitler went after the Jews first. No, he did not. He went after the invalids and the communists. And then when the German people didn't complain that he was killing ethnic Germans who were invalid or ethnic Germans who had bad philosophical ideas, then he went after the Jews, and nobody complained because he basically had them prepped.
That's why people have to become insane about the us versus them, like what you're going over, in order for that next step to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and are you guys familiar with
That's why the division exists, because it's engineered.
Well, are you guys familiar with C.J. Hopkins now?
Exactly, Joe. It helps keep us down. We're fighting with each other. We can't organize.
And microcosm of that, you can look at crypto. You can look at crypto since about 2015, And whether it's the banks, whether it's the nation states, I don't know who precisely is buying all the money, right? That's what they've done to crypto. They've made it
and show me a maximalist, and I'll show you a Fed. As far as I'm concerned,
exactly. They've totally made it into just a tribal warfare, and essentially you can't like those guys because they're not that's not my chain.
Right.
It's like, oh, but it's a different. It doesn't even compete with you. It doesn't matter. Those guys are scammers, right?
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Well, and you know, to a certain degree, you've seen people who used to be genuine maximalists move away from that position. If you have people who come and say like, yeah, I used to be a maximalist, but now I'm moving more towards multi-chain, right? These are the folks who were genuine maxis, right? They were genuine people who believed it once and then changed their minds. Folks who haven't changed their minds yet, these start to feel more and more like the folks who kidnapped Whitmer, you know, or planned a Whitmer kidnapping.
I think they are trying to divide and separate us. It makes us easier to control. And it's unfortunate. And I wonder if we, as American people, can push back or heal this nation. There was a time where we were able to debate and talk. I always point out Reagan. Reagan slammed the hell out of Democrats, made fun of them, loved doing it. But he'd always work with Democrats to get legislation passed at the end of the day. We've somehow forgotten that. Do you think it's possible, guys, that we could return to that type of era? Or is it?
I think we will naturally return to it, actually.
I believe
really?
Yeah, I believe that the return to it will happen as a matter of course when we no longer have a state and we still have a country.
There is no
you can
right
see on
and
Twitter
left
where it's happening.
Republican.
I remember
the state will destroy itself.
Ted Cruz, AOC said something, and Ted Cruz said, "You know, I agree with you. You made a really good point on that." And she's like, "I don't need you to be raised. I don't want the fact that you agree with me now makes me question myself."
Yeah,
there's that much hatred. It's like, oh no, don't make it look like we can work together.
Yeah,
we've got us versus them.
Yeah, and Mark, my optimism comes from the fact that I think that there's this huge mass of people out there who are intelligent and thoughtful and are already halfway there to wanting to rebuild it. It's just that they're not in power, and power is so well concentrated in the hands of this divide and rule crowd. They can't hang on to it for much longer. There are too many people.
I'm wondering about that
out there that are just like you and me and everybody who are just sick of all of this bullshit, and want to get back to living for the sake of building a home that everybody can really be proud of, right? You know, I think that's so much of it. I look around and see my neighbors; they maintain their lawns, they live for their children, right? Like it's just a thing that I think we will do as humans.
Yeah, it all hopefully work itself out soon. So we need to cut here. So I'll take since John's gone, and hopefully he finds some good victuals for his basement that are dried and that he can live for a couple of years when New York is zombie infested and all craziness is going on there. So what's going on this week, Greg? What do you have for closing?
Let's see. Rivet is starting to talk. So they're going to replace the Gorley test net with Holesky, and we're starting to talk about that. So we will be having Holesky support when it launches, when they finally get it up and running.
Nice.
But in any case, Rivet is still in the process of expanding to new networks. If you are building on blockchain and you want help with your infrastructure, help on how to set it up, you should check out Rivet, because we're here to help you help build this parallel society we've been talking about. There's a decentralized infrastructure project too that we're part of. More news on that to come shortly. But if you're building, Rivet will help.
Always good. Satoshi Shan, what is new?
Everything I said earlier, we got a show on Saturday, the Crypto Rednecks. Truth Tuesdays. Check me out on my usual socials and all that.
Cool.
And check out Brandon Herrera for Congress. There's a link for the show on my channel. And try to get more involved on your local level. I think that's the only way. That is one way we can save
Yes.
the republic, is to start from the bottom up.
Hopefully.
Because
Local
that's where
action.
we've seen it happen, where a law is passed, and like all the sheriffs. I mean, Chicago, one of the biggest gun control cities. The law passes for Illinois. 11 out of the 12 sheriffs say no, it's unconstitutional. We're not going to enforce the law.
Right.
And it literally, the governor is just standing there hitting the desk like, no, I made a law. It really, there's something John said to me, McAfee, that, your government's it's not real. It's just an idea. If I ask you, what is the U.S. government, you can't point to a building and say that's it, or the army, or it's just people having an idea and accepting it as a reality. And if 11 sheriffs out of 12 in your state say, no, we don't believe this is real, it's not real.
I agree. John McAfee. Mark.
Check me out at Marcus Ruiz Evans at YouTube. See the interview I did with Joe and other people, and we'll continue to do interviews on political polarization because it's not going to get fixed anytime soon.
Yes. Okay, and for me, go to din.social, go to the round table there, and take part next week. All good stuff. And I guess if you can afford to contribute to the Dragon Chain Legal Fund, legalfund.dragonchain.com. The lawyers, of course, cost a lot, and we're fighting against the money printers themselves at the SEC. So, do if you can to just support us online, and try not to troll me too much or anything.
Yeah. Whoever's watching over at the SEC, be sure to give your bald-headed clown-faced baby boss a slap on the ass.
Well, we love the SEC. SEC, good guys. We know we're going to work this out, right? Because they're going to see the light of day.
And Constitution and law is important, and some dude just declaring stuff because he thinks he's smarter than everybody else is not really the way to go. So anyway, so I think we have a visit from McAfee right now. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
America is not the government, people. The America is you. It is the Grand fucking Canyon, the Rocky Mountains, the deserts of the Southwest, the Pacific fucking Ocean, the Atlantic fucking Ocean. It is the grandest continent. And what the fuck have you people done? You have turned yourself into sheep, every goddamn one of you.